Good evening, and welcome to Creating Community During Quarantine. I'm Deborah Holloway, Executive Director of Arts in Reach, and we are coming to you tonight from the 3S stage. We are excited to be with you and to listen to local teens tell their stories about how the pandemic has impacted their lives. Before we get underway, I'd like to thank the many volunteers, donors, private foundations, and corporate sponsors who support AIR. I especially want to thank our dedicated board of directors. We are grateful to 3S Art Space for making this event possible, and our platinum corporate sponsors, Amber Lillystrom, First Seacoast Bank, Fishnet Media, and Newburyport Bank. We could not do what we do at AIR without their support. Our mission at AIR is to empower teenage girls through inclusive, creative community. As you have likely heard in the news recently, COVID has led to what many are calling a mental health crisis among youth. In New Hampshire, currently, the number of teens contacting the statewide mental health crisis hotline are at record levels, and the number of teens waiting for acute mental health services are at historic levels. Recently, the CDC reported a 31% increase nationally in teens seeking emergency mental health services, and significantly higher rates for girls than boys. As a result of teens' increasing needs, AIR has responded by providing social and emotional support during the pandemic. We have continued to offer our arts-based programs online without disruption. We have doubled the number of our programs over the last year, and we have extended the age range of our programs to 11 to 22-year-olds. Teens say virtual AIR has had a significant impact on their lives during the pandemic. Our programs make them happy and feel less alone. They say that AIR is something positive to look forward to and a place to go. And most importantly, AIR gives them a positive, stable community connection. Community connection and positive social and emotional experiences like those gained through the arts are essential for healthy adolescent development and well-being. As renowned artist Louise Bourgeois has said, art is restoration. She wrote, "Art repairs the damages that are inflicted in life to make something that is fragmented, what fear and anxiety do to a person, into something whole." Here is a short video for you to learn more about what we do at AIR. Our mission at Arts in Reach is to empower underserved teenage girls and gender-expansive youth through inclusive creative community. Since 1997, AIR has served nearly 2,000 teens from southern New Hampshire. We have evolved from a small summer arts camp to a year-round series of 16 programs for teens ages 11 to 22. During AIR, teens collaborate with peers and professional artists to create visual, literary, and performing arts, and to present their art to public audiences. Our programs take place after school and during vacations when teens are often unsupervised and at risk of unhealthy behaviors. All our programs are free of cost to participants, including transportation and technology assistance. AIR promotes creative development as well as social and emotional learning, safe risk-taking, and the skills that teens need to thrive in education, careers, and life. In the process, teens build confidence, resilience, and self-advocacy. As one AIR alumna said, AIR helped me realize my capabilities, my strengths, and even weaknesses. I learned so much about myself and my passions, and that it is okay to speak up for myself in all aspects of life. AIR not only impacts teens as they navigate their challenging teenage years, but has a lasting influence on them as they grow up, empowering them to be involved in and contribute to our communities and economies. According to alumni, because of AIR, they graduate from high school, pursue higher education, and volunteer in their communities at significantly higher rates than their peers. They also go on to instill in their own children the healthy values, confidence, and resilience they gained in AIR. Tonight, we'll explore how the pandemic has affected the lives of a group of teens who shared their stories as part of an AIR film project last fall. This film, called Thrive, was made possible by the Richard Spencer Lockhart Fund of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. Here is the opening sequence of Thrive about teens' daily lives during the pandemic.
So how has your day been going?
Pretty good. It's Friday. Doesn't feel like a Friday. I have no homework this weekend. Nothing like terrible has happened so far. Everything's run by pretty smoothly. So that's good.
Had a good school day? Everything's just meh?
Yeah, it's an even day. So I have about 3 hours of school as opposed to 6. So that's great. This year, there are certain days where I'm like, oh my God, I have like 3 projects due this Friday. I haven't started any of them. What am I going to do? I'm going to be on this computer 24/7. I'm freaking out. I have class right now. I don't like group projects. I'm not having fun. And then other days where I'm like, wow, class just ended at 11 and I have no work and I get to do whatever I want for the rest of the day. This is great. I could do this for months more. So it fluctuates based on the amount of workload. But when I have a lot of work, I'm definitely just thinking about how much I'd rather be back in school, even though personally I kind of prefer this, at least right now. I don't know. Again, it varies.
So how's your day been going?
It's been going pretty, it's pretty normal Friday. Although we didn't have first block today because I don't know why my teacher was out, which was nice. So I got to finish my paper. Had a pretty easy second and fourth block. My third block's always my hardest because it's honors biology. And we always do like a bunch of vocab and take a lot of notes. Obviously, you already know after school, I took a really long nap because I was just so goddamn tired.
Not too much has happened, although quite a lot has happened at the same time.
I get that.
That probably sounds really vague, but...
No, I understand that completely.
Yeah.
I miss going to school, which is shocking because it's not that I don't like school. I love to learn. If I'm not learning, I'm bored. In the summer, I miss school in the summer. I can't wait for school to start again because I love to learn, but I'm very surprised on how much I miss actually going to school, you know.
How has your day been today?
My day has been alright. It's just, well, mostly just did school, and then right after I felt a bit tired, so I just laid in my bed for a bit, watching some TikToks.
I kind of like, I always liked going into school. At first, when they said we would be doing it remote, they just said for a couple of weeks at first. And so I was kind of like excited about that, I guess. But yeah, then after the few weeks, they were like, oh, we're actually going to be doing it for a few months. And then they just kept saying that. So after that, I was like, wow, I would much rather be in school.
I've been joined by our first panel this evening, and I'd like to introduce them. Across the stage from me, Rebecca Romanowski, AIR Program Director. And next to her is Ayana DeYoung Martin. She is the lead filmmaker for Thrive and an AIR participant. And in the middle here is Sienna Jeffries, and Sienna is an AIR participant, and as you just saw, also a part of the film. And to my left is Catherine Stewart, the teaching artist for the film project. So Becca, could you start us off tonight by describing how this film came about?
Sure, yeah, thank you. So it was in 2019 when we first started talking about the possibility of doing a documentary film program. And at that time, we were thinking more broadly about creating a film that had to do with teen mental health and kind of how creativity and imagination fit into that. And then we found ourselves in a pandemic. And so our conversation kind of shifted to thinking about how could we create this film? Would the pandemic really kind of taint the creation of a film? And as we continued that conversation, we came to the realization that the answer was kind of staring us in the face. We didn't have to be afraid of this topic or what kind of tough stuff was going on currently, that we could really use that to create a film that shared really important stories and that was really compelling. So we moved forward in that way. And first we reached out to Catherine. So we've been lucky to work with Catherine, and among her artistic talents is filmmaking. And Catherine helped us work through the logistics of, how do you run a documentary film program when you're all working remotely? And then after that, when Catherine showed us it was possible, we reached out to see if there was teen interest, and there was interest both on the side of filmmaking and learning how to be the interviewer, and interest in terms of sharing stories, being the person being interviewed. So yeah, once those pieces were together, we were able to begin with the goal of letting teens share their important stories, and we saw the shape that the film would take based on that.
Thanks. Catherine, as a teaching artist for this project, what was your role?
Yeah, as with all programs where I've worked with Arts and Reach now for over 6 years, the role of the teaching artist is really to provide the skills and knowledge of a given art form, and in this case, that's filmmaking. And so, but what's really important to remember is that the art is already in the teens, and so really all we're doing is looking at what skills and knowledge they already have and where can we supplement that, add to that, open up their perspectives into the world around them, which really every artist needs. And that's why being a teaching artist with AIR is so powerful for me, because it's always an artistic process for myself as well. I'm collaborating with teens to make art. We explored genres and themes within documentary work, and we looked at the skills needed to conduct interviews, to create B-roll, and how those things can help tell a narrative. And we also explored the ethical issues around documentary work But the thing to really remember is to think about, with every session where we come together, is what is the craft and the skill that we can teach and explore, but then like kind of let's get our hands dirty and do the making at the same time. And that's what we were able to transfer into the online kind of digital world as well, when we couldn't be in the same space.
Ayana, first, I want to congratulate you. Ayana has just recently been named an amplifier by the New Hampshire Women's Foundation and will be one of the awardees in a couple weeks, so congratulations. And as a lead filmmaker for Thrive, what was your favorite part of the process of making the film?
I think one of my favorite parts was interviewing and picking up on the general mind space of the pandemic and quarantine. Yeah.
And you did a great job at that. Sienna, as a participant in the film, what was it like for you to be interviewed by Ayana?
It was definitely a different experience because I've been in projects and stuff before. Like I was in a journalism class, I was being interviewed all the time for like papers and stuff. And I thought overall it was a good experience. Like I enjoyed it. I think Ayana did a very good job of asking the questions, and she asked like the right kind of questions. One aspect of it that I also thought was well done was how it eased from like more generic questions into personal questions, which I didn't mind answering. I'm an open book, so that wasn't really very hard for me. But overall, I think it was an interesting experience, and it was a good one at the same time.
Well, let's look at another clip from Thrive about how teens, in Ayana's words, handle it.
So how do you handle it? Like physically or emotionally, how do you handle it?
I guess I handled the pandemic not great sometimes. I'm definitely on my phone more often than I used to be. I've been exploring like, different TV shows and movies and YouTube videos and genres of music, I guess, and those do provide comfort, but I guess it's not terribly healthy. I've been trying to go outside. I've been like the first person to use this like a plastic play set in our backyard that we haven't touched in 5 years. Sometimes I use that just to like swing on. I try to go out roller skating with my mom sometimes, or biking, which is fun. I guess just trying to like breathe in the fresh air and take advantage of nice days more often.
It's like at the beginning of all of this, I was like kind of like everybody, where I was kind of like in denial. I was like, oh yeah, America's gonna be fine. Like we're gonna be fine. We're not gonna go into lockdown or anything. And then once it hit, I was just like, oh crap, like this is real. And around like I think like the March, April area, I was like in a really bad mental state. Like it was not good. I was sleeping until I would be like staying up all night. I would sleep until like 1 every day. I like always wanted to be by myself. I was distant with my friends and my family. I didn't take care of myself. It was bad, but luckily I feel like once summer hit and I started doing Upward Bound summertime stuff, and then like once school and stuff, it was a lot better. Like, so that's good. Like I feel like having a routine and having something to do made me feel a lot better. Like I'm definitely in a better place now than I was then.
Basically, outside of the occasional walk a few times per week, I've basically been inside this house the entire time. It once got so bad that I was just like, I'm probably going to be suffocated and stay in this house for so long.
Yes, I very much do feel like I'm sort of in purgatory. Because I'm 17 and I'm at a point in my life where I should have been getting like independence. This is the age where I would have like gotten my license and been driving around, sort of going places on my own and not being held by my mom's hand.
I've been kind of mixed about. There's some kind of virtues in a way to this year. My grandmother died at the beginning of February, and I'm glad that she's not around to have to be like constantly checked in on, like us worrying if she's like okay.
I feel like I stopped doing a lot of my hobbies, to be honest, because schoolwork took up a lot of time. And then during the summer, I was just kind of like bored and tired and slept all the time. I don't know. I like to draw and read sometimes.
I feel like this is like one of the first times in my life where I've like realized who like my real friends are, because they're the ones that actually like stayed in touch with me. This is the first time I've had like a real like guy best friend as well. Like obviously like we were close before, but we're close again, which is nice. Also this is the first house we've ever lived in. My mom bought her first house this year, so that's a pretty big first. My first dog. We got her a couple months ago. So they're like little things, but they're like exciting things, which is good.
I've had, I don't know if you would call it a first, but I guess it could be a first. I felt really great for the first time in a couple of years because I have a chronic illness. I have a couple of them, and they were undiagnosed, and they got diagnosed during COVID, and for the first time in a while, I'm feeling good. So I guess that's the first too. Oh, and I crocheted for the first time, so that was fun.
Have you had any like firsts this year?
Firsts? First pandemic. That's certainly been a first. I have to say, I don't think I've had any like real milestones going on. My life has sort of been like on pause, just waiting for this whole pandemic to smooth over. I was going to get my driver's license, but I kind of halted that.
I wrote my first song by myself.
And we are back with our panel. So I want to ask a question to Ayana. Did anything surprise you about your interview since you actually knew these teens before this project?
It surprised me that only my story was like directly correlated with COVID-19. The other stories were just sort of life during the pandemic, but they weren't like directly like I had it or someone that I know had it. It was just like, this is my bubble and that's their bubble, and we're, coexisting, but we're separated.
And we are going to see Ayana's story in a minute. Sienna, how does it feel now to watch and hear yourself respond to Ayana's questions?
Well, I think everybody can say this. It's definitely weird to see yourself on film, and you're always ask the people the question, is that what my voice really sounds like? I know, it's always weird for me to be like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. But I would say that, like, in my life, things are definitely better now than they were then. I would probably answer those questions a little bit differently, especially because even since then, that was only a few months ago, I feel like I've changed so much, like, just being back in school and having like that more of that social connection has changed, because I'm a very extroverted person. Most people realize that in the first couple of minutes of meeting me, as I'm sure all of you did tonight. So having that social interaction was good for me, and good for me as like who I am as a person. And it really honestly made me realize how much of appreciation I have for my friends and family, because they're like so important to me. And one last thing, hi Grandma.
I'm glad you did that. Ayana, someone from our online audience wants to know, how you chose the questions you asked the other teens.
So we chose 3 words each that would kind of make a timeline of how our interview questions would go. And I can't remember all 3 of them, but 2 of them were purgatory and hope. So I tried to make it so it had like a beginning, middle, and end, and it would end with hope. And so I chose questions that I would have wanted to answer. I wasn't asked them, but that's okay. So they were just like questions that would pop up in my head occasionally. And I would be like, that kind of works for that theme. So, yep.
Nice. I like that idea that you ended with hope. Becca, someone else from online wants to know, what has been the most effective thing that AIR has done to support teens during the pandemic?
Yeah, that is a good question and a tricky question. I think that it's hard to pinpoint one thing as most effective, and I think that's especially true because I think one thing we've learned during this time is that what feels helpful and supportive is really different for different people, and I think that it's subjective. It depends on a lot of things, a lot of factors, especially factors that relate to privilege and identity and lived experience. So that being said, I think that the most effective thing that AIR has been able to offer to teens during this time is really listening to them. I think that AIR has shown up for them, given them a space, a community to speak and make art, and then also not been, listened in a way that's not judgmental to what they have to say. And then from a programming perspective, that means that we've made some adjustments. So we've shifted expectations in terms of how we structure our programs, so we're not always working towards an end goal or an end showcase. And we've shifted some of the kind of art forms we're doing to be more conducive to an online environment, to make sure that our programs are still remaining really accessible. Yeah, so just staying open, flexible, and really responsive to the varying needs that are out there.
Thank you. Catherine, in this next segment, you interview Ayana about her mother getting COVID. Would you like to introduce this clip?
Yeah, thank you. I'm a big believer that art speaks for itself, so I'll not introduce too much of the detail, but I will just say that it was really important during the program to explore what it feels like to be an interview subject and to be the interviewer. And so the best way, as I said previously, to do that is to do it. So that means that the AIR participants and Ayana was able to sit in the subject's chair prior to interviewing other individuals so that we could talk about the ethics of documentary work, particularly when you're dealing with challenging subject matter and the experiences of individuals and how, as Becca's just said, those vary so greatly depending on your lived experience. And so Ayana was very open and willing to explore what it feels like to let a documentarian in to your world, and to see that it has to be a conversation, that there has to be consent and there has to be trust, and then you can go from there. But that consent is something that is always and repeatedly given. It's not, yes, you can ask these questions and then you go off. It's continually, can we be in conversation with one another? And it's so powerful to hear Sienna talk about Ayana's skill of starting with seemingly, generic or simple questions that then move into something a little bit more touching, that makes you think a little bit more, that goes a little bit deeper. And I think that Ayana's skill that grew over this project was really that empathy that is so important for us all to learn, but that was really emblematic in the work that the teens were doing during the program.
Well, let's take a look.
Yeah, she got COVID in like early to mid-April, I think. It may have been the end of March, but so she was the only person in Rollinsford, as far as I know, who had COVID. And they didn't test her because the tests weren't like widespread yet. They were still hard to come by. So they would only test you if you were a high risk. She's not a high risk, so she just called her doctor and they had like the list of like requirements that mean that you have COVID. And they just told her, you have COVID, you don't need to be tested. So she quarantined for 2 weeks, and someone on a Facebook group for Rollinsford who had been like following the like cases for the town, they were like, who has COVID in Rollinsford? And I made the mistake of commenting and being like, my mom has it, don't worry, like, I'm being safe, I'm walking the dog, I'm staying away from everybody. My mom is at home, she hasn't left the house this entire time since she came down with COVID. And everybody started like commenting, and they were like criminalizing me for like walking my dog. I was terrified to leave my house. I would like walk really cautiously and look out for anybody. And I mean, thankfully, I went on Facebook. I went through and made sure that there were no pictures of my mom or myself, so no one would be able to tell that it was me who they were like having a witch hunt over. So I was sort of anonymous in that way. But it's a small town, so I had to be really careful. And I tried to be nocturnal. Like, I tried to be like on like the night shift or something, which sort of just became the norm because everything sort of stopped. But it started out as me genuinely being terrified that like I was gonna get arrested for walking the dog, even though that's not a crime. Because they thought, I mean, obviously if she had it, I had it, but like I wasn't near anybody, and there was no one outside because everyone was at home panicking in their house. So it was just desolate, like no one was outside, like ever. So I was fine to walk Togo, my Yorkie, by myself without worrying about other people. And there were 2 people who, one of them messaged my mom threatening to call the cops on her, and the other one just told me to just stay home in all caps, ominously. As the weather got better, everybody started coming outside more, and they just sort of forgot. And I stopped updating whatever, like in the comments, I stopped going to that post. I think I turned off notifications. I blocked a bunch of people because they kept harassing us.
What a powerful story, Ayana. Thank you for sharing it. What would you like people to take away from your story?
I think I said it best when, in one of our like film meetings, we were just sort of talking in general about life during COVID, whatever, and I just like thought of this like good metaphor for it, that we're all in the same boat, but we're just in different parts of the ship. So like we're on the same like planet with the same pandemic, but we all have our own problems. So like don't jump to conclusions, you know.
Goes back to what we were saying earlier about not being judgmental, right? Yeah. Catherine, what have you learned from working with the teens on this film?
That really the best thing that I as a teaching artist can do is get out of their way, to be quite honest, right? Give them anything they might need. But usually those needs are fairly small, actually. and that the teens have, as I said before, everything in them to say what they want to say and say it how they want to say it. And that so often teen voices, I think, are portrayed through the eyes or the voices of adults. And so if I can keep remembering and we can keep striving towards programs that really are not amplifying the voices of teens, like that is kind of the right phrase, but it's actually like just give them the mic. Just give them the mic and let them run with it, right? And that's two metaphors, but you know, just like you just that you know what you want to say. And so let's find a way to say it together. I'm here to help, but go for it. They're your words.
Thank you. That's very nice. Nice way to end this portion of our evening. And I want to thank you all for joining us here tonight, collaborating to make this film. And Ayana, you know, you did amazing work on this film. I hope you feel really proud. So next, we have a clip about the virtues of quarantine.
If you could just go back for like a day to how things were like pre-pandemic, what would you do first?
I think I would definitely, I'd hang out with my friends. Yeah. And I'd be able to hug them all and say how much I love them all. I so want to be with my friends and family who I'm not able to be with. I'd just give them the biggest bear hug possible.
So I would see my friends and I would just kind of, I don't want to say cherish those interactions, but that's like really the only word that I can think of. I would really hold those interactions closer than what I think I did.
Is there anything else that comes to mind as we're talking about this?
I'd also go to get my driver's license as soon as I can. So I can go places on my own.
I would probably just hang out with like all of my friends at once for like the whole day. Yeah, and like go to the mall or something, or the movies, or just something I can't do right now out in public.
I think a lot of people really like to look at the negatives of what's going on and they only think about the negatives, but for me at least, there's been a lot of positives. Again, telemedicine was a thing, and I think that's really going to impact healthcare for the better because it makes healthcare a lot more accessible to people. People are getting into art and things like that, and they may have never done that before. So I think that's a really positive thing, just finding interests that you may not have found. I think people are learning to not be so reliant on others for how they feel. And I think that's a really good thing. I don't think you should have to rely on, and obviously there's human interaction is good. We're social people, but I think learning to not rely on others for happiness is a really important thing, and people are learning how to do that. So absolutely, I think that there are positives in this situation.
I guess the best virtue is that I don't have to wake up at 7 in the morning.
I've never been stuck at home for this long. And yeah, and I've never like not seen my friends and like my family for this long. And yeah.
How does that feel?
I definitely wish I could see my friends and family. That's probably like the worst thing about COVID is not being able to see other people. Because at the beginning of the pandemic, I kind of felt like, oh, well, this will be over soon. You know, the teachers say we're going back in a couple of months. And now it's kind of like, I don't know when this will be over. Like, this could last another year. But at the same time, now I'm more used to being home all the time. And so, yeah. So I guess I have more freedom now because I know what I can and can't do. And yeah. And I've gotten used to for being alone.
Life sort of feels, well, I'm a lot more stressed than I usually am. I had depression that was in remission for about 2 to 3 years. And this pandemic came and it kind of came back, which is not fun, but there is the bright side, which the pandemic will end and probably the depression as well. So yeah, I might not be feeling great, but I do have moments of happiness. Like my birthday was exciting. A few video games that I've been really looking forward to. One just came out a couple months ago. I've played a ridiculous amount of it. And another one is coming out next week, which I'm really excited for. So while I do have moments or a lot of stress and sadness, I do have moments where I'm just really happy,
So how do you handle it?
I suppose I've just treated it each day as it comes. So I don't really concern myself over what the next day or week or month has in store for me. I just my goal is to just keep on going and survive a day at a time, and it makes things really manageable because you finish a day and you feel really great. And then you wake up the next day, you finish another day, and you handled it well, and you feel really proud of yourself, and you go to bed. I also make sure to head outside into just my backyard and to be in nature when it's just myself. But I'll see these squirrels running around and they'll be having a great time, and it's just oh, yeah, that's awesome. And while I might be stressed and there might be a pandemic, in the greater scheme of things, the world keeps on moving. Things keep on going on as they do. So that's been really helpful.
I've been joined by our second panel this evening, whom I'd like to introduce. Across from me is Cara Cabral. She is the program manager at AIR and our representative on the Dover Mental Health Alliance. And next to me is Kristen Welsh, representative of NAMI, New Hampshire, and also a member of the Dover Mental Health Alliance. So Cara, what strikes you most about what the teens said in that last segment?
Well, it's two things really. I'm struck by their collective longing for connection and for seeing and hugging friends, and also their resilience, their ability to see the positives in this pandemic, whether it be a growing prevalence of telehealth or a new video game that comes out, or just finding time to be present in nature. And they're so thoughtful in communicating the challenges they've experienced in this time and how they handle it, the healthy strategies they use for coping.
And there's that hope that Ayana mentioned earlier. Kristen, what has NAMI seen happening with youth across the state during the pandemic?
Yeah, so, the mental health of children, youth, and young adults has really been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. I mean, not one of us has been immune from the collective trauma of the past year, but that age group in particular has really been uniquely affected. And, we're prepared for the marathon, not the sprint. This is going to have a long tail, and the impact of this on youth and young adults, I think, we can't even comprehend what we're going to see at this point. So And I think we heard a lot of themes through the film that, that our young adults are just being constantly bombarded with: the isolation, the uncertainty, anxiety, depression, worrying about your family members. And now that we're, in this period where we're sort of returning to, normal life again, or sort of easing back into it, there's stress over that as well. And for youth and young adults, the access to the normal outlets that they would have had to relieve that stress was gone. They didn't have school, they didn't have sports, they couldn't hang out with their friends. I think that was really difficult for us as adults to comprehend, let alone an age group whose brains are not even fully developed yet. So, one comment that really resonated in the film with me was that they're in purgatory, or their life was on pause. And I just thought that was so poignant and wise, and it's just so spot on. So, I saw those things in my own teenager, and I think we're all feeling them for ourselves. And, just a few things that we are keeping an eye on. So in New Hampshire, suicide is the second leading cause of death for individuals aged 15 to 34, and for youth aged 10 to 14, it's the fifth leading cause of death. So this age group was already at high risk. So we really need to pay attention to what's happening with them. And, we've seen a real uptick in mental health issues in this age group. The Concord Monitor did an article a few weeks ago that, there's a real workforce shortage in mental health. And, there's existing providers are at about 95% capacity. Many are not taking on new patients. And then that leads to what's a real crisis in our state right now, which is emergency department boarding, where individuals who have been deemed a danger to themselves or others are, waiting for beds in emergency departments for psychiatric treatment. And, this year on Valentine's Day, there were 51 children waiting for a bed. So, it's a real issue. And we're, at NAMI New Hampshire, we're just hopeful that people can connect with resources and support before there's a crisis. It's a systemic issue. I think, yesterday the New Hampshire Supreme Court ruled that individuals are entitled to a probable cause hearing within 72 hours of being detained in an emergency room. So that's a step in the right direction. But, it's a real access issue statewide. So thank you for having this event and raising awareness of some of these issues. It's really important.
It is really important. Recently, Air was named a place by the Dover Mental Health Alliance. And Kara, as our representative, could you describe what it means to be a place and why it's important?
Yeah, so a little background. I represent AIR on the Youth and Family Subcommittee of the Dover Mental Health Alliance. We were founded about 2 years ago, and we were born from a shared interest to tackle mental health stigma in the Dover area. And we're comprised of nonprofit representatives, business leaders, educators, therapists, frontline workers who have joined forces to normalize the conversation around mental health, raise awareness of its challenges, and deliver education and resources to our community. And the Dover Mental Health Alliance Place Initiative is a designation that's given to individuals, businesses, and organizations that prioritize the mental health of their employees and community. And places must meet a number of criteria to earn this designation, which include training in mental health first aid, adverse childhood experiences, and having resources readily available for someone seeking support. And AIR was the third organization to receive the place designation. And for us, becoming a safe and judgment-free place was a natural fit, and it further affirms our commitment to supporting the mental health of our staff, our teaching artists, and the teens we serve.
Thanks. Kristen, what advice do you have for people who may know a teen or anybody who is experiencing struggles with their mental health?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, we want people to know that help exists, there is hope, and you are not alone. So please reach out, please ask for help. Do it before it becomes a crisis. There are a lot of resources out there, and We encourage people to get in touch with their local community mental health center to find treatment. You can find your local center by visiting nhcbha.org. You can also contact the NAMI New Hampshire Information and Resource Line. You can reach that at info@NAMI, NAMINH.org, or by calling 1-800-242-6264 and pressing 4. That is not a crisis line. So, it's not something that should be contacted if it's an emergency. If you are experiencing a psychiatric emergency or a mental health emergency, you can contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255, or by texting NAMI, N-A-M-I, to 741-741. And I would just say, please keep sharing your stories. Talk about your struggles. Talk about your challenges. I commend all of the young people in this video. It was, just by being vulnerable and sharing and talking about it, they have made a tremendous difference. And I hope that they are proud that they did that. And I hope they recognize the impact that they have had on likely so many lives by, being open and sharing their own struggles. So definitely keep sharing, and that goes a long way to crushing stigma and getting other people to reach out for help. And I I loved the advice that I think it was Grace gave in the film, to just take it one day at a time. It's great advice. So reach out for help if you need it. Keep talking, keep sharing.
Thank you. These resources that Kristen just mentioned are in the description on your screen, and we will show them again at the end of this event. I want to thank you both for being here tonight and sharing this important information with our audience. We need the word to get out that everybody needs to prioritize their mental health. I also want to thank all of our panel members tonight, and especially Ayana and Sienna, for sharing their stories and for participating in making Thrive. I also want to thank our online audience and your interest in this topic and your participation tonight. We are recording this event, and we will make it available in a few days. We hope you will share it with anyone that you think might be interested. AIR needs your support to make our programs possible. Please go to artsandreach.org to make a gift and help empower teenage girls through difficult times. Now more than ever, teenagers need your support. Before signing off, stay tuned for just a short bit longer. We have one last clip, and it features an original song written and sung by Ayana. Thank you for joining us tonight. Good night.
I feel like I'm in acceptance, but I don't want to accept it. I want to get out of it. I don't want this to be my life. In a pile of blankets, I see a home. That's where I found your wandering soul. Is this confidence winning, or are you staring at the ceiling? Can you let me in, so we can begin? Thrive on the music, here, near and far. That's where the truth is, that's where the truth is. Thrive on the music, when you don't know where you are. That's where the fear is, that's where the fear is. Now I'm stuck in traffic, turn on the radio, hear nothing but static and songs I don't know. I have the drive, but I feel it in their eyes. Can you let me in, so we
and far. That's where the truth is. That's where the truth is. Thrive on music when you don't know where you are. That's where the fear is. That's where the fear is. Now thrive on music when you know it's time to sing.